Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's regular Board of Education meeting. We will begin with Cassidy and our high school report.
Good evening, Eastchester community. Come and experience the amazing Eastchester High School Jazz Co's 31st Weekend of Dance. Join us for incredible performances on January 31st and February 1st at 7 p.m. and February 2nd at 1 p.m. Tickets are available at eastchester.booktix.com. It was so heartwarming this past weekend seeing our community come together to celebrate Argus Nardone's life. He was a beloved police officer and athletic coach here in our community. Nardone's son came in to thank our community and honored his friend, Alex Bonsi, who also served the Eastchester community. And congrats to our amazing basketball team on their win. There's a great show of school spirit here at Eastchester High School during our Winter Pep Rally. Thank you to all the students and teachers who participated, and special recognition for all the efforts on the EGO and Ms. Kenny, who organized an amazing event. And just a reminder that the high school's Building for Tomorrow Club is running a clothes drive until the end of the month. They're looking for new and clean jackets, gloves, hats, etc. Please donate to help out those in need. And congratulations to the varsity cheerleading on winning first place in Game Day at the UCA Garden State Championships. Keep supporting these girls and our other winter sports as they move deeper into their season. Good night, and thank you for supporting all of us Eagles.
Thank you, Cassidy. Really appreciate it. At this time, are there any committee reports? Nope. Okay. All right, so we're up to the board president's report. As you all know, back in September, this board announced that we will be conducting a search for a new superintendent, and we introduced District-Wide Search as our search firm that we selected, and they provided a timeline. I've invited Bob back to update the community as to the status of the superintendent search and basically where we go from there. So, all there. Okay, thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much. Good evening. The search is, in fact, we are just about ready for the board to be interviewing candidates. It's been a good run for the last, really since the beginning of the school year. We have interviewed, I want to say, north of 40 people. And tomorrow evening, and by the way, part of the process, we've been having forums along the way. We've met with all the different units in the school district. We met with students. We had a community forum. And we also had on the district's website a survey that nearly 300 people answered in terms of what we should be looking for in terms of characteristics for the new superintendent of schools. That was all given in a report to the board, so the board has that information. And tomorrow, over the candidates that we are bringing forward to the board, and we are very excited to do that. So, any questions?
You know, Bob, sorry, guys. One question, in working with Bob and Hillary and Joanne, which I think is really important for the community here, from the surveys and number of respondents to the constituent groups that were interviewed to the number of applicants that we had, from their estimation, it was a very robust pool of candidates, which leads me to this is a very desirable district and a very involved community. So I'm through the finalists and some of the interviews. We will also be pulling in some of the building level administrators as well into that process. So I know they've been involved in that already and they've been notified by our district clerk. So I look forward to going through the binders, looking at the pools of candidates. And I will say, we most definitely made the right decision with you, Bob, and Joanne, and Hillary on the search. It was extremely comprehensive, and I know even just looking at the amount of groups and surveys that you did, no other search firm was willing to do that for our district. So I thank you for that, and I think we look forward to continuing the hunt for the next
Thank you.
superintendent.
We enjoyed it. The groups we met with were very, very forthcoming, gave us a lot of information, and the caring that we saw within, not just within the school, but within the community, was great. And I still remember someone at the community forum who doesn't have any kids in school, but saw the sign and just stopped and came in and participated, which was great, because even if you don't have kids in the school, if you live in the area, you're still part of the district. So that's great. And we're excited to meet with the board tomorrow night.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for you and Joanne.
Thank you.
For all the work. Your updates have been amazing, and so far we're on target for our final announcement.
Absolutely, and we look forward to making your job even more difficult tomorrow.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Dr. Valenti, we are up to your report.
Okay, members of the board, members of the community, tonight we'd like to, first of all, as we do every board meeting night, recognize some of our student groups. I'd like to say a few words about an accelerated learning program that we've communicated with the community broadly on, and some of the outlines of the goals for that particular program, as well as a steering committee who we'll introduce to you. And then a word about restructuring and next year's school budget. So let's get with it, starting with our students. We want to recognize our varsity cheerleading team tonight. For those of you who may not know, Eastchester has qualified for the national championships with their strong performance at a regional qualifier held at Iona University in the month of December. The team placed first in medium school game day cheer and sixth in traditional cheer. They will compete at the national championships at Walt Disney World Resort in Florida, February 7th to February 10th. So on that note, where is our varsity cheerleading team? Guys, come on up here. Come on. You want to form a nice circle here so we can get some photos of you guys? And I need a spokesperson. Who's your spokesperson? Who's your captain? Where is the captain? You say a few words? Oh, come on. Can I force you to say a few words?
Come with me. Where is it? My other captain.
Who else do you want?
Annie, my other captain.
Your co-captain?
Yes.
Right. I'll introduce you as...
Alexa.
Form a pyramid.
Okay, well, they're organizing themselves. We have Alexa and Annie, who would like to say a few words on behalf of the team, and likewise yourself. And did you want to say a few words?
They're going to say it for me today.
They're going to say it for
I'm
you?
going to speak, yeah?
Okay, very good. And in the meantime, I dropped my wedding ring.
No, that you can't do.
You can't lose.
No, that you got to hold on to.
It's been too many years to lose that. You're in charge. Go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the coaching staff and varsity cheerleaders, we'd like to thank you for honoring us at this evening's board meeting.
The team and coaching staff have been working hard this winter season. In addition to earning 2 bids to nationals, one for our game day routine and one for our traditional routine, varsity has also won first place at several local competitions, the Empire Regional and the Garden State Challenge. These 2 competitions are highly competitive and excellent preparation for nationals, which is a little more than 2 weeks away.
We'd like to acknowledge our athletes and coaching staff for all their hard work throughout the fall and winter seasons. Christine Roth, Nicole Salucito, Sandra Cirillo, Alyssa Ciotti, and Amanda Bernardi.
All right. And we have and I'm Stephanie Leone, one of the coaches as well. Well, I didn't write my own name. And then we also have our game day and traditional team, Dottie, Ella, Bella, Olivia, Amanda, Crystal, Riley, Athena, Daniela, Annie, Samantha, Maddie, Sam, Liana, Sophia, Alexa, Olivia, Lexi, Sam, and Lily. And our staff and athletes are simply the best. So thank you so much for honoring us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Why don't you get in there for a group photo?
I'll go down by Sophia.
I'll just sneak backstage. How's that?
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Our high school jazz company, 41st Weekend of Dance. We have our advisor here, Heather Riley, their junior officers, Alexa and Angela. The 41st Weekend of Dance will feature 3 performances from January 31st to February 2nd. Let's welcome Heather, Alexa, and Angela. Please come to the microphone.
I'm Alexa Almodovar, the Junior Vice President of JazzCo.
And I'm Angelina Kratsoulis. I'm the Junior Secretary.
JazzCo is a district-wide program that provides dance experiences and performance opportunities for students in grades 4 through 12. Through dance, students learn the importance of teamwork, community, and personal wellness.
High school students rehearse from September through February. After the annual Weekend of Dance, many of High School JazzCo members then volunteer to choreograph and teach younger students. This year we have our 41st annual Weekend of Dance, and we're performing on Friday, January 31st at 7 p.m., February 1st at 7 p.m., and lastly Sunday, February 2nd at 1 p.m.
You can purchase tickets at eastchester.booktix.com. We will also be selling tickets for students in the cafeteria every day next week.
JazzCo has many styles of dance, including lyrical, ballet, modern, tap, hip-hop, African, Latin, theater, Caribbean, and lastly contemporary.
This year, we offered a new program called Discover and Dance for students in grades 4 through 8. The students joined us for a day of dance in November and have continued to rehearse with the video we provided. They will perform on Sunday, February 2nd.
And lastly, we want to talk about what JazzCo means to us personally. For me, I think that high school is like such a big place, and JazzCo offers the opportunity to meet people of all grade levels and create new relationships that you wouldn't originally in the first place.
Personally, I love that they offer so many different types of dance. This year, I got to do African, and it's a really different dance style. And this year, we're having live drummers at the show, so make sure to get your tickets and come see us dance.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
What about a photo, guys? Come on. Come up there.
Okay.
Yeah, Kodak moment, all right? Oh, Johnny.
Right there, Steve. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We got a round of applause. Okay. Earlier in this calendar year, we conducted a survey of parents, and I did report at several board meetings the results of that survey regarding an accelerated learning program. To summarize what I had reported earlier in the year, elementary parents very strongly supported a program for accelerated learners who would benefit from systematic curriculum, feedback, loops with parents in terms of the program and the support of a curriculum and a teacher who would address the needs of accelerated learners. I want to make a distinction before we go too far into this presentation. Giftedness and accelerated learning are two different concepts. Now, if I were to draw a Venn diagram, 70% of your gifted students would be in one category, and maybe 30% would spill over into accelerated learners. So we can't say that all gifted students are accelerated learners, or all accelerated learners happen to be gifted students. Giftedness is much more specific and unique depending on the definition that you give it. For example, giftedness could work across multiple areas of students' talents: music, art, a 5-year-old child, pianist playing Beethoven. That could be a gifted child. That's not necessarily an accelerated learner. So tonight, we're not talking solely about gifted children. We're talking about our accelerated learners, some of whom may be gifted, and some of whom may simply be accelerated learners. I wanted to make that original distinction, and if individuals want to pursue that, we'd be happy to do so. So we have a goal for our accelerated learners. We love the WIN period. We think it offers our students an opportunity during the elementary school day to be able to enjoy certain experiences that they normally do not get during the regular school day. The WIN period provides remedial assistance to students in ELA and math. The WIN period now provides occupational therapy, speech therapy, and other services to our special needs pupils. The WIN period is now being used for our Junior Great Books program, critical reading programs at other schools, etc. So it's a great way to have 60 minutes of diverse instruction for a diverse group of differential learners. We thought that would be the best location and setting, both at Ann Hutch and Greenvale, to begin this accelerated learning program. Why Ann Hutch and Greenvale? Because we believe second grade is the wisest age to begin to look at acceleration. We've given youngsters their pre-kindergarten experience, early childhood experience, their K-1 experience at Waverly. And we think we're in the best position at that point to identify youngsters on two major variables that I'll get into in a minute. So we want to anchor the program in the WIN period. We're not talking about pulling children out of ELA or out of math or science or social studies. They're in the WIN period. And we are looking to provide services to them through grades 2 to 5 in that WIN period, 60 minutes. We're structuring it so that I will put into the budget for this coming year, resources available, of course, a teacher who is certified in gifted and talented education. Now, that is a separate certification under New York state law. There are 9 to 12 additional credits you take in order to diagnostically be able to identify giftedness and students who are accelerated learners. There are techniques that you use in delivering the program. There are techniques that you have to learn in terms of generating curriculum. So we think we would benefit from someone certified in this area. We'd like to hire one full-time teacher, and working with the committee we'll introduce shortly, we think we could divide that one teacher 3 days at Greenvale, 3 at Ann Hutch, in a 6-day cycle, and provide services up to about 80 students at Ann Hutch, and again, 80 students at Greenvale. So if you take 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 4 grade levels, and you set a maximum of 20, that would be a maximum of 80. We would not want to go over that number. It may come in lower. It could be 17 at grade 2 and 19 at grade 3 and some other numbers at other grades. So we don't want to exceed a certain number, but we do want to commit to serving up to a maximum of. Goal number 2, how are you going to identify these children? Well, first of all, you look at the academics, the achievement, and the NWEA tests that we administer 3 times a year right now, once in September, a second time in January, a third time late spring. We administer them in ELA and math. So we said, number 1, take advantage of scores that we already have. And I'll show you some results in a few minutes. We want to take those scores, examine them very carefully in grades current year 2, 3, 4 at both schools, and identify up to about 20 students who score in the 90th percentile or higher to participate in this advanced learning program during next school year. So we're looking to launch in September. Our third goal is that all students who qualify for either or both ELA and math accelerator classes must score in the 90th percentile as well on the cognitive abilities test. Now, that is separate and apart from the NWEA, ELA, and math tests. Cognitive abilities looks at a whole different area of a student's intelligence. It gets beyond achievement-orientedness, and it gets to areas of spatial relations and other areas where language may not necessarily drive a student's score, but where a broader range of knowledge and relationships, analogies, etc., test that child's capacity on a more diverse level than, if you will, in any particular subject area, ELA or math. The COGATs measure ability. The NWEA measures achievement. If we combine an ability score and an achievement score, then we're able to honestly say we think we have a child who qualifies for an accelerated learning program. Let me say a word about the COGAT because I have been involved in programs like this, most recently in a district here in Westchester. We found that a number of our L students who achievement-wise do not necessarily score in the 90th percentile on the COGATs do, because they're not language bound. The COGAT is testing your visual figure relationships, areas that demonstrate your capacity to think beyond your ability to interpret the English language. So there are L's right now, and there are also our students on the spectrum right now who could qualify for an accelerated learning program who do not necessarily qualify when you look at their achievement data. So we think it's very important to take that into consideration and then make holistic judgments based on a broad range of both achievement and ability scores. Fourthly, we want our teachers to have input, and that's why it's very important that in the selection process, while it will be data-driven, we do think that bringing the human element of teachers and their support and advisement is very important, and we'll introduce some of them tonight. Our fifth goal, we want to increase our students' engagement, not only in the program that we're developing, Accelerated Learning, but there are programs out there, Destination Imagination, which we had in Blindbrook some years ago, Science Olympiad, which we have here, a Capstone fifth grade symposium, programs of that nature that really give more agency to students in terms of developing products and projects that would demonstrate the results of their learning. And finally, we want some interdisciplinary research experience that would culminate perhaps in an 8th grade getaway experience, or really I should say gateway experience, not getaway, right, Bill? We don't want a getaway, we want a gateway, yeah. So there is a distinction, like between accelerated learners and gifted. Yeah, all right, anyway, who's on our committee? Dr. William Meyer, Chair, Joanna Sinisi, Greenvale Principal, Laura Capiello, Ann Hutch Principal, Caitlin Mandelli, the Waverly principal, Robert Jacoby, our director of technology, and our literacy coaches, Maria Elena Barbudo, Christina Aron Conrad, and Dana Orlando are also on the committee. Could I ask Bill and the committee to come up here and speak with us for a minute or two?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Meyer will introduce the committee and say a few words. Bill?
So. You need to unlock your iPhone first. Oh, there you go, being recorded. Dr. Valenti tasked us with the work of exploring the idea of an accelerated learning program here at Eastchester. Fortunate enough to have such a robust group of individuals a part of this committee, individuals both at building level leadership, but also coaches, understandings around technology, literacy, learning. And I think just to echo this in the conceptual design of this work, it really goes back to, I think, a piece that was brought up much earlier in the year, which is how can we continue to enrich the WIN period? How can we meet every student in that space and in that time? And when we think about this work, and I know the committee's had multiple discussions, and obviously this is just in preliminary place at the moment, it's one, you want to identify where different students are at, and as many data points as possible is always, I think, advantageous when you're doing this work and finding those students. But you're also, and there was great consensus around this, trying to create experiences that transcend just curriculum. So the work of potentially that G&T teacher within the WIN period isn't about giving someone additional math problems or having them read Tolstoy. It's really thinking about how the knowledge they're learning in the other parts of the day can be brought together in creative and new ways. And that was sort of referenced in terms of Destination Imagination, Science Olympiad, a capstone experience. And I think really the most exciting piece about this, and if it was done and done well, is that it isn't going to just impact a specific group of learners. It should ripple out to the entire school community. And it's the practices and experiences that are being incubated within that group, within that WIN period, that ideally over subsequent years, that individual would also be a coach, an advocate, working with the broader population of teachers, and basically having an open invite for all fifth graders to participate in a capstone experience, right? So it's a starting place in many ways, just like Great Books. It would be a pilot experience. I mean, obviously a lot of thought has gone into it, but how can we meet all of the learners within the district, and how can we continue to grow them in their fullest potential? I don't know if anyone would like to add to that.
I think Bill hit the nail on the head.
All right. Yeah. Laura and Joanna work together on many programs, so I want to assure the board and the community that they jointly will take leadership at the building level. We've talked about the importance of our coaches. Our literacy coaches will play a role. Caitlin, obviously, will work with Joanna and Laura from a principalship point of view, identifying students, arranging for the technical, logistical areas that need to be addressed, the scheduling issues, et cetera. And hopefully each of our literacy coaches will play an active role, maybe even with math coaches if we get that far next year, in terms of helping to inform the thinking of the committee. So did any of the coaches want to say anything to the group about the program or how you see your role involved in it? And of course, Robert gets all of our data and manages it for us and allows us to do all kinds of interesting things with the data. So we think it's a top-notch committee, and we're going to get to work right away, even before the budget process gets fully going. And we would appreciate any questions that board members may have right now of our committee or Bill or myself. Chris?
So this is very exciting. We're embarking on something new, I feel.
So I understand the testing, the spring is going to be the cognitive abilities test, and then there's going to be the ELA and math score tests, and then, I guess, then there'll be, and this is the committee who will determine kind of what students kind of fall into that category. And if we're looking to, I guess, roll this out in September, so will students and parents, I guess you'll call them in to speak, whether they want to be a part of the program or not? Is there an option to opt out, opt in, depending, I mean, you know what I mean?
On that note, and that's an important one, we would like to follow the same principle we're following with our Regents 8th grade algebra and earth science. Parents have a right to waive their children out. Suppose you're selected and the parent feels, well, this may be too much pressure for my child, all right? So you do have the right to say, thank you, but no thanks for this year. And we've had some instances of that. Conversely, suppose a parent says, look, I'd like to have a meeting with the committee, or representatives of the committee, to look at my student scores more carefully and to try and make a case that I think my child belongs there. Well, we'll give parents that opportunity as well. We're not saying we're going to automatically agree, but we think parents should have the right to either opt in or opt out, and then the committee would make a final judgment together with the administration. Did you have another question, Chris, or was that?
Quick question on this too. How often are we going to reassess the children that are in the program? Is this going to be an annual basis? Is it going to be semi-annual? How does that work?
Well, the best advice and the research suggests that initially you need to do what we're doing for all of our students and testing them, correct? And you need to do the COGAT and use those two scores. If I'm a second grader and I've gotten into the program at Ann Hutch or Guendo, do I automatically go to third grade in that program? Well, the short answer could be yes, because if the teacher's observing and working with your gifted and talented accelerated teacher, and they agree, hey, this child is doing very well, is benefiting from it, this win experience is the right one, then we wouldn't have to retest that child. Conversely, if there were children who were having emotional and or other difficulties, then, you know, we may want to take a look at that child and see whether that's the best experience for that child in the win period the following year. So we don't want anybody imprisoned within a program, you can't get out of it, or you can never get into it. I think there has to be a certain amount of rational fluidity in terms of ingress and egress, but we definitely don't have to do all of the testing. Now, NWEA we do anyway, so the data is there, but you don't need to do the COGAT every year. That's what I'm saying.
Just along the lines of Sean's question, what if there's a child that's coming into the district that doesn't have the test scores? Is it now automatic that we'll test incoming students for this program?
No, that's a very good point. I want to comment on that from two perspectives. Every child who enters kindergarten every September, but let's talk about this September, we have an obligation under the commissioner's regulations to test those children and identify whether or not there are signs of giftedness. Now, our instruments right now may not be sensitive enough to that, and we're going to have to take a look at that as a separate issue. But if there's a kindergartner, an incoming child in kindergarten or any other grade level who demonstrates giftedness as defined by the Board of Education, and we could have that conversation by our own policy or using the research, then we ought to design a program for that child. The principal has an obligation to notify the superintendent that we think we have one or two children who may be in the category of giftedness, and we have an obligation to provide a program if that is possible. For any child coming into the district, we would administer the NWEA anyway, right, at the elementary level. So even newcomers would take that academic test. Then we would have to provide, again, the COGAT when they initially come in. Was that your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go, Chrissy.
Hi. So I know that there are some concerns that this would only be reaching a limited number of children. So Dr. Meyer, I appreciate what you were saying about the ripple effect and this hopefully affecting more students. So Dr. Meyer or anyone else on the committee, I have a question. Do you envision this as being, during the WIN period, part of a pullout or part of a push-in, or maybe a little bit of both? How, or is that still up for discussion? How do you envision this happening?
We currently see it, in the model that we've been discussing, where we would be hiring a teacher and she would be alternating days at Greenville and Ann Hutch. It would be a pull-out program because we would be taking, just by default, we will have a sprinkling of children from every classroom. So there would be a pull-out for the hour of WIN where they would be working on more project-based things that, like Bill said, are beyond just the day-to-day curriculum, so it would be a pull-out program.
Then how do you envision it having a ripple effect?
So I think what would happen is initially, for example, those students might participate in, let's say, Destination Imagination, and then in the second or third year, you can invite other students. You'd have multiple teams, and then those students who are in the program would be on teams with students outside of the program. Those students might have different components that they'd be asked to explore in terms of a long-term research project that could culminate in a capstone, but other students who would be interested in participating could also be a part of that. And I think the broader piece is that individual in that role would also be, in many ways, a coach, right, to the broader staff and teachers in terms of supporting that type of thinking. I think we can all agree in the moment we currently live, the past sort of notion of memorization or just really learning that's grounded deeply in siloed content areas is not the world that our students will be entering. So the more we can begin to lean in, as Joanna just referenced, to PBL projects or to exploration or asking students to be creative in their thinking, and maybe as Rob and I have discussed, maybe maker spaces, I think the more we are preparing them better for the world in which they're entering. So I do think it would take time, and I think just like anything, you would incubate it first, but then obviously you would try to make sort of those barriers between the general population and those students as permeable and as transparent as possible, so that work is transcendent.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Can I go real quick?
Yeah, and a sidebar note on that, Chrissy, we right now have in the WIN period what I would call differential programming. When you have OT and PT for certain students, when you have AIS, math, and ELA, those are two separate programs, but we use the WIN period, that's its power, its flexibility. We now have a junior great books program at Ann Hutch. All right, so that is something that is a differential program for a group of youngsters not involved in AIS or, so from that set, we're taking a subset who would be part of this accelerated learning program. So in effect, we're using WIN for a differential program for children who we believe are best served within that. And I think it really speaks to the strength of the district when you're differentiating on a programmatic level and you have a systematic curriculum and you have a feedback loop with your parents. Those are critical elements.
Very, very quick question for the committee, because Dr. Valenti, I noticed in the beginning of the presentation, you said pending resources. So I know as we're building the budget and we're looking at next year, one thing that's always a concern from the parent community is making sure that the class sizes are at a certain point. If we do not have the ability to add an additional teacher to do this, to maintain what our class sizes are, is this a goal that the committee feels could potentially be accomplished through something like professional development for all the teachers? Because by definition, the WIN period is what I need. So if you have your accelerated learners, your ones potentially on grade level, or your students that need support services, I always hang on the word pending because, as Dr. Valenti well knows, and for the community, we have a budget. And as the building leaders are coming up with what sections look like and cohorts and different building needs, and we look at over just the past year, all of the things that we put first and foremost, which we see in all of our awesome literacy coaches here tonight, resources that benefit all of our children. I do wonder along the lines, Bill, of that ripple effect. Could it be better served for a ripple effect to do some professional development for our existing teachers, while it may be a longer road to do that, and look at resources a different way? So I would ask the committee, if we're unable, based on cohorts and class sizes, to have a designated person, is there a way for us to solve for that with our current teachers in the WIN period currently through different programming for accelerated learners?
Before anyone on the committee dives into that, Mr. Finelli, let me take a deep dive. And I want to show you two more slides while the committee is here. I talked about the NWEA scores, right? These are the actual results, the numbers from Greenvale. Students who are at the 90th percentile or higher in ELA and math. Now, granted, this was September, so it's not a composite score, September, January, and the spring. But we identified in the area of ELA, you can see the numbers, I don't have to recite them for you, certain cohorts of students, okay? And in math, you can see the numbers there, all right? Now, what we need to do with this Greenvale data, and we're going to do the same with our Ann Hutch data, I don't have to repeat it, but the same tests revealed youngsters performing both at the 90th percentile and higher. We're going to take out that famous Venn diagram and say, student A, is in the 90th percentile in ELA, and student A is also in the 90th percentile in math. And guess what? Student A on the COGATs demonstrated that level. Now I've got something working, connecting to identification of a particular child. So the first point I wanted to make while the committee was still here, if there are any questions you may have on that point, I want to address your budgetary note, but if I could wait until the next portion of my presentation, all right? Is there anything in the selection process that any of the principals or coaches wanted to address, or Robin, any of the data you've been looking at? Whoop. Jill?
While we're on the numbers question, I guess I had two questions, partly piggybacking off of Matt's question as far as from a budget perspective, yes, there might be reasons why we can't hire a teacher, but I guess what is the preferred ultimate, have you considered other ways to accommodate a program like this? Is the WIN pullout the best scenario, or is that just what we are trying to do because of our situation as far as our scheduling, or is there a better, more preferred solution where perhaps it is teachers teaching within the school period in the WIN or vice versa? And then the second question on numbers is, let's say we have a lot of very intelligent children scoring in these high ranges. How do we manage if we're above certain numbers to accommodate all the kids that qualify to go into the program? Are we going to limit that? Is there a different selection process? Would there be a scenario where we might not capture all the students that are deserving of the program?
Yeah, very simply to your second question, we reserve the right to adjust 90th percentile to 92nd percentile or to 88th percentile.
So it's going to be limited then to numbers?
You can't go over that 20. We'd like to stay in the 15 to 20 range and give ourselves a little bit of flexibility. And that's why you need a committee of educators. But to your earlier point, if you want a successful program, you build it around a set curriculum. You build it around a teacher who works on that curriculum with her colleagues or his colleagues. And you build it around that teacher who will deliver that curriculum and relates directly to the parents of those children. That is the optimum recipe for success. Now, that does not mean that you cannot train an entire faculty to deliver a program, but that will take you more time, in fairness to your faculty. Your faculty comes with different levels of experience, of learning, certification, background, etc. The original complaint that I inherited 3 years ago was that the WIN period is great in some ways, but in other instances, it doesn't deliver a uniform program for children. A second grader may have this experience one day, next day may have a different experience, a fourth grader in another school may have an alternative experience. If you want that unity of effort, and to some degree that systematic curriculum and delivery, which gets you results, then I think you have to go with this design. Can this design merge, or should I say evolve, into a design where your entire faculty is invested in delivering this kind of instruction? That should be a goal for your next superintendent. Seriously. Because that's an ideal direction to go in. But you have to begin somewhere, and the starting place is someone who delivers excellence initially. And then that's your starting point. Yeah.
Okay. Just to bring it back to the qualification really quickly, so we are looking for the student to have to be in the 90th percentile in ELA, math, and the cognitive abilities test.
Ideally combined, that's correct.
What if a parent were to say, my child scored very high in math, but not ELA, but 80th percentile on cognitive? Is that something that the committee would discuss, or are we really trying to stick to those?
Well, I think the parent has a right to make that case, and the committee has an obligation to engage in a conversation. In other districts that I've initiated this program, we've designated some of our educators, and Jill, you know this. We did this in Greenberg, and we had a lot of rich conversations with parents who felt that their children were qualified or preferred not to be in the program. And that's where you get into a real engagement. Do we reserve the right to say to the parent, okay, we'll try the child for a year, and we'll give the child an opportunity, and we'll report back to you after the year? That's fair too. So we don't want to ignore the parent, but we want the parent to see all the data. And sometimes that's a tough thing to see on behalf of one's child as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any comments from the committee? You still want to serve on the committee now, right? We didn't scare you away, did we? All right, well, let's, Michael, where are you? Did you take a photo of the committee, Michael? All right, why don't you guys come up here? We want a photo of the committee. We want to give this program a little bit of pizzazz. All right. I'm going to stand next to somebody shorter than me. Okay, here we go.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Okay, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. Okay. Oh, and we already discussed this, an accelerated learning program teacher who would have these certifications required and ideally preferred either in special ed and or literacy. And obviously 3 to 5 years successful teaching experience. And one of the roles of the committee will be to interview candidates and make a final recommendation to the superintendent. Okay? I want to say a word about restructuring and get to your question, Matt, about budget, because I know there's a buzz in the community that we're restructuring and we might be, maybe, use the word may be reducing certain positions and adding other positions. So I wanted to speak to the issue before people's questions got out of control. So here are some budget challenges we have for 25-26. It's an absolute rule we stay below the 2% tax cap. All right? Not every district says that from the get-go, but my reading of the Eastchester Board of Education and the community here is that unless you're absolutely forced to go over the tax cap, ideally our residents would prefer something that is within the tax cap, okay? other than what's allowable by law. It's called excludables. So that's one goal. We're not going to change that. Another goal is to estimate no more state aid for next year than the current year. Now, there were certain runs that came out today, what we call state aid runs. And some of you may read in the newspaper tomorrow different runs showing that certain districts might be getting more aid and certain districts less aid. Let me take a little bit of the mystery out of this. If you just run the numbers, Eastchester should be entitled to more aid next year if you allow the current formulas to work. Our BOCES aid should be greater because we're investing more in professional development and technology. When you put more money into those areas, as we did, in terms of all the work we've done in technology, we worked through BOCES and lease purchase agreements and our PD, you're going to generate more revenue in the following year. So I would argue that you're going to see more money on that line if they allow that formula to continue. The other area where we're going to be getting more money, and we're grateful to the community that passed that $70 million bond referendum, you're investing more money now in that program, and therefore your building aid is going to be increased commensurately. So someone may be seeing that the initial numbers are higher than what we're currently looking at this year, okay? The only caution caveat I offer is, fingers crossed, that is true, but it's all up to the governor and the legislature in terms of what the bargaining is going to be and the negotiations are going to be. There are districts that are losing money in those state aid runs. They're obviously going to go to their legislature and say, whoa, wait a minute. You know, why is Eastchester getting this and we're not getting that? So that's where I would caution it. So my hunch is that we should be in a slightly better position next year. On the state aid, we should be in a better position because we'll take another bow to the Fed. You recall that from last year. We're still holding at about 4.5% on our investments, and the rate has not gone down appreciably. If that continues through June, we'll exceed our expectation. However, there is an area that we're going to be well below in terms of our tuition revenue on special needs pupils. We're probably going to be down about $300,000 or $400,000 from what we anticipated. So without getting too far into the details, I think we're going to be in a fairly good place, not a great place, but not, you know, where we're cutting and running around very anxious about next year's budget. So do I think there's room for an accelerated teacher? Only if we satisfy our basic needs, and I'll get to that in a minute. The last point, I think we should hold all other revenue sources at current levels. What are the tools we're going to use? We use these in every budget, but I would suggest that when we look at budgeting, the board looks at zero-based budgeting or program-based budgeting, not incremental increase budgeting. What is incremental increase budgeting? Well, you gave me $2,000 this year for equipment. I would like $2,250 for next year. And I don't have to justify it. That automatically my budget increases by X percentage points, all right? That is not the way to budget. And that's not the way it's done in the real world. We can't do it in the real world of public education either. You either have to start at zero and say, we have a $100 million budget, now it's zero. Tell us, what must we do? Well, we must run a kindergarten because we have 5-year-olds who qualify. And if we have 200 of them, guess what? We're going to need 20 teachers, et cetera, all right? So zero-based budgeting is a form of program budgeting, but it really gets to the fundamentals, and you build up from what's mandated, and then you go to areas that you would like to offer within the limits of your tax cap. Program-based budgeting is what we're doing here with the accelerated program. All right, does the accelerated program trump teacher-student ratio? No. We want to serve teacher-student ratio at each grade level legitimately within the 21, 22, 23 number that we've done, well below the contractual mandates. But we want to honor that first programmatically before we honor an innovative or different program. If we could do both, that's great. Take math coaches. Ideally, we should have 3 math coaches, Waverly, Greenvale, and Anheuser. And we should have full-time math coaches. But suppose the budget can't sustain that. Could we develop a 2-year plan so that maybe we do some math coaches 1 year and some the next? That's a program-based budget. So within the limits of the resources you have available, you have to make judicious decisions after you've served your fundamental program. And if you follow that algorithm, if you will, I think then we can answer some of these questions pretty rationally. So let me talk to restructuring. I'm recommending that we look at the creation of an assistant superintendent for curriculum, instruction, innovation, assessment, student success, all right? We did have one when I first arrived in curriculum and instruction. We decided then to restructure and take some other steps. And I think now we're ready, as we prepare for the next several years, to take a hard look and reinstate that position. Does it need to be a new and separate position apart from the staff we currently have? No. We might be able to develop within our own staff someone who is able to assume that role. We'd like to examine the benefits of shifting more so from district-centered leadership to school-based leadership. What you saw up here earlier this evening is your school-based leadership. If we're going to hold people accountable, we must start first at the building. What are their deliverables? We have a principal, we have an assistant principal, we have a literacy coach, we'd like to have a math coach, we have AIS teachers, an MTSS team. How will they deliver in terms of student and school outcomes? And maybe you don't need as many people weighted at the central level to do those things. Thirdly, what are the relative benefits of our K-12 supervisors versus school-based literacy, math and STEM coaches? And what about middle school chairs? I've wondered why Eastchester's model does not include math, science, social studies chairs. We have them at the high school. At the middle school, we have team leaders, but their role is not to coordinate curriculum. So again, arguendo, should we give the middle school the chairs to coordinate with their high school colleagues as part of a larger curriculum council? And that links into your coaches at the building level who are the equivalent of chairs at the elementary level. What about district-wide chairs? What are we doing for the visual arts, for the performing arts? What are we doing for E&L? Should we have someone who takes broader responsibility, either at the administrative level or at the chair level, for some of those areas where our teachers span all the buildings? We have that in the Director of Physical Education, Health Education, and Athletics. We have that in other areas, Robert Jacoby with technology, where you have a K-12. So I think we need to look at that element as well as shifting to the building. So it's really a two-pronged effort, looking at centralization and decentralization and how best to maneuver that into a budgetary design that we can afford, but it's going to reap the best results. And then we do have 9 teacher retirees. Maybe all of them should be replaced. Maybe some of them should be replaced, but we're going to take a hard look at that. So we've got a lot of options on this budget, on the revenue end, on the expenditure end, and in the middle. So in February, we'll talk more about it when we have more data, but I did want to give you that sense of the goals of where we're going. Does that get to your question, Matt?
It does. Thank you, Dr. Valenti.
Okay, good. Are there any other questions from the board or comments? Good. I want to thank the committee again for showing up tonight, for being part of the committee, and you've got your work cut out for you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Valenti. Okay, so we are up to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Jackie?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the following: 8 personnel agenda, 9 Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations, 10 pupil personnel recommendations, 11 business office recommendations, 12 educational and curriculum and instruction, 13 board policies, 14 other business.
Thank you, Jackie. Do I have a second? Sean, all in favor? Anyone abstaining? Good? Oh, okay. Thanks, Lori. So we're up to our future meeting dates. February 4th will be a workshop meeting, followed by the February 25th regular meeting, which is also the budget presentation. Now we are up to the comments from the public section. Just as a reminder from the public, please state your name and address for the record. As always, we welcome all public comment and feedback, but please be mindful that we will not exceed 30 minutes in total for this portion of the evening. Each person has a hard stop of 3 minutes. This is not a question and answer session. Please be civil and refrain from mentioning anyone by name. And if you would like to have a broader discussion on any topics, please feel free to email the district.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Donnelly. I emailed the board and Dr. Valenti yesterday, and Dr. Valenti was kind enough to respond quickly, even though it was a holiday weekend, so thank you very much for that. I just wanted to follow up on that question with a quick in-person appeal. I wanted to mention that the school food services vendor, School Dish, for this entire school year has been missing food ingredient and specifically allergy information on the school lunch menu. Last year it was always pretty easy to find, and this year when I didn't see it on the one-page printout menu, I reached out to the food services director, and I didn't get any resolution on that despite a number of emails. So I just wanted to follow up and hope that this committee can look into that and make sure that something is added to either the menu itself or to the website so that people who are working with food allergies can figure out whether or not we can buy lunch for our kids. Just for an example, I was looking at this week's lunch menu. Tomorrow's lunch, it has all the ingredients laid out very nicely. You know, in the meatballs, it says exactly what's in it. But then in the next day's lunch, which is chicken nuggets, the ingredients just says chicken nuggets. So it's a little bit hard to parse out, you know, what we can do from there. So if that could just be tidied up a little bit in the course of this school year, I'd really appreciate that. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Donnelly, if you could just sign in so we just have a record of that for the district clerk. Thank you.
Hi, Kyla Murphy, 303 Marbledale. I am here in my capacity as president of the PTA Executive Board, the PTA Council Executive Board, with Hillary, our vice president. So this is a statement from the Executive Board of the Eastchester PTA Council regarding changes to the Meet the Candidates Night. On January 17th, Dr. Valenti announced a change to the date and format of the Meet the Candidates Night, an event designed to allow the community to better know the candidates for the Eastchester Board of Education. This event has traditionally been hosted by the Eastchester PTA Council, as encouraged by New York State PTA guidelines and moderated by the Independent League of Women Voters. It has been on the district calendar for May 12th since last school year. According to this email, Meet the Candidates will now be held on May 5th and hosted by the district and moderated by students with questions collected by the district. The PTA Council was not consulted nor informed of this change. We are disappointed in the lack of collaboration. The Council is open to changes in the format of Meet the Candidates Night, given feedback from last year's event, which was unfortunately provided too late to be addressed last year. As discussed at our December meeting, this was in fact an agenda item scheduled for our open meeting in February. However, we do have grave concerns about the lack of independence, both perceived and real, presented by the format as described in the email. Allowing district personnel, who are essentially employed by the Board of Education, to collect and collate questions for a Board of Education election can lead to the appearance of a lack of independence or a bias toward certain candidates. That being said, our collective goal should be to encourage community discourse and participation in the May Board of Education election. We would therefore encourage the PTA units to submit questions and encourage our members to attend the forum and vote. However, we very much hope that the district will be more collaborative going forward. We also urge you for you to look for ways to reduce conflicts of interest and bias, whether real or perceived, in this new format, especially without the help of an independent moderator. Finally, while we encourage the efforts to get students more involved, we have concerns about the safety of an in-person event and ask the district to ensure that they have an adequate security plan for our students before making any changes. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Hermeet, 135 Oakland Avenue. I have a son in high school, a daughter in middle school, and a daughter in Greenville. And actually, the question was really, I think, by you, Chrissy, about the ripple effect of ALP program. So I just want to give you an anecdote. My son, when I was in middle school, he was accelerated in math and went to high school. And one of his friend saw that. He was in middle school and he said, I want to do it too. So my son coached him. Then he was able to skip a grade 2 and they both got 100 in regions. So there is a ripple effect, and that's all I'm trying to say here. But today I'm here to talk about what I always talk about, which is STEM, right? I'm a STEM advocate. And the point I want to make is when I came here 12 years ago, we were lacking in STEM compared to other districts, especially in math and engineering. And in the past, we have done a lot. In past 4 years, we have come a long way with our Science Olympiad, going to regionals, robotics program, and this ALP, and now our kids last year got into STEM colleges like MIT. So we have done a lot. And I just want to make sure that the momentum we have continues. So there's talk of restructuring that's happening, and it's going to affect STEM too. And I just hope that it affects in a way that the momentum is maintained and we do better than what we have done in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abby Ruane. I'm a parent of 2 high school students at Eastchester High School. My apologies for any confusion, but I couldn't tell in the vote if the policy 9150 was passed just now, or is that separate? Because I received notification that it would be passed tonight, and I had a concern that I wanted to raise. So could that just be clarified?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, my apologies. I was not able to find the agenda, so I was waiting for the agenda item. I just wanted to express concern about this policy. I understand that there have been challenges that need to be addressed in the school district that this seems to be addressing, but I also think it's really important to recognize that most of the teachers in the schools are really trustworthy, work really hard to support their students, and there can be negative ripple effects from overly cracking down on them. So in this student policy, there is a line about inappropriate communication about personal life beyond academics. I think that this is really a challenging line, and if possible, it would be good to have this removed, because teachers have to support their kids in their mental health as well as in their academics. And saying sort of a vague line that means that they are not going to be able to talk to them and ensure that they're like whole people, I think is really problematic, especially for at-risk kids who might reach out to students, to teachers for extra support. In addition to things like going on bus trips to far away locations, or what is your backup plan for safety and security. So my apologies for not catching this earlier. I didn't see it on the agenda and it went quickly, but I hope you can consider this. Thanks.
So the policy is really in effect in terms of having the communication monitored through the district-approved platforms and/or device. This isn't like we want to avoid the general phone or, private emails of students, but this is all in the purview of district-approved devices.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
just to be clear on that, because you bring up a very important point, the policy is not designed to prevent that. It's to make sure that that's happening in a transparent way on district-approved devices, not to eliminate that completely.
If there are are there any more comments from the public? Okay, if not, then I'll have a board comment about the Meet the Candidates event. As someone who participated in the Meet the Candidates events last year, I will say, when it was hosted by PTA Council and the League of Women Voters, there were a lot of issues and concerns in terms of communication and collaboration, lots of concerns about neutrality. So in this model, I think that not only are we giving a great educational learning experience to our students, but it is also, just to be clear, not being run by the district, not being run by the superintendent or the Board of Education. It is being run by our district clerk, Ms. Lori Parada, who runs the entire election, and she will be working with the debate club students and the debate club monitors, and that's it. That's who will be running the questions in the Meet the Candidates event. So just to be clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, do I have a motion to adjourn? Sean? All in favor?
I'll
Second.
I'll second it.
Second, everybody just threw their hands up. Right, good night, everyone. Have a good evening.